Good morning, everyone. Hello and welcome to this Cyber Lab and Sophos webinar. Apologies for being a couple of minutes late there. We were just sorting some technical issues out. Hopefully you can hear us all loud and clear. My name is Gavin Wood and I'm CEO of Cyber Lab. And thank you to everyone who's joined today. So we're at this webinar between Sophos and Cyber Lab, introducing the Taegis platform. If we just skip through to the next slide, I'll just run briefly through the welcome and agenda. I'm going to just do a quick introduction. We're going to run through the new security mandate, visibility, speed and scale, and then a deep dive, unifying detection response with Taegis Managed XDR. So without further ado, I'll do some introductions. So as I said earlier, my name is Gavin Wood. I'm CEO of Cyber Lab. And Cyber Lab are a cyber security provider covering all aspects of cyber security, from first-class penetration testing services through to full MSSP services. And one of our longest and strongest partnerships is with Sophos. And it's really great for me to be able to say that Cyber Lab has been a top Sophos partner for 20 years. And most recently, we were awarded Partner of the Year and Public Sector Partner of the Year for FY25, which is absolutely fantastic and a real joy to say. And it really does show the deep connection and integration between our two businesses. And it's really exciting for me to be hosting this webinar today. And hopefully some of you will know, and if you're not aware, Sophos recently completed the acquisition of SecureWorks. And this brings a whole new suite of best-in-class technology and services into that Sophos portfolio. And joining me today to give the main part of our webinar, we have Jez Edwards, Enterprise Sales Director at Sophos and formerly of SecureWorks, and also Bill Beverley, who is Enterprise Sales Engineering Director at Sophos and again, formerly of SecureWorks. And I'm really looking forward to this presentation. So we could just jump forward to the next slide. So a little bit of scene setting for me. In cybersecurity, you can't protect what you can't see, and total visibility is no longer a luxury, it's a necessity. Today, as threat actors become more sophisticated and attack services expand across hybrid environments, the role of the modern security operations center is to provide that relentless visibility into every corner of your digital estate. And in this session, we're going to explore how the Taegis MXDR platform can deliver that visibility, from detecting early stage attacks to enabling rapid, informed responses, and why organizations that embrace this visibility first strategy are staying ahead of the curve. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Jez.
And that security mandate crosses a number of different subjects and challenges, but ultimately we really need to make sure that we're delivering visibility, speed and scale to all organizations across different planes, different industries and different areas. And I'm just going to cover a couple of topics that some will be top of mind for a number of us, I'm sure, but actually provide some context around what we're seeing and what we're delivering. Just a quick summary of something that, in terms of a statement here. So really that aligned with visibility, the biggest threat to organizations today is actually the speed at which really complex attack strategies, theories, techniques and tools are being replicated, mass modified and shared. I know for a fact that only in the last few months, we've really seen this particular methodology and idea really come to life. And I'm going to flip this conversation slightly on its head and just say, actually, what positive impact is this having for the adversary? So not for ourselves, but those people out there who are causing strife for organizations globally. The first major point is that with these impactful areas of tool replication and idea sharing, actually it's really reducing the skill level required of individuals and groups to consistently launch actually really sophisticated campaigns. And secondly, it significantly reduces the cost involved. And ultimately, actually, what we'll see is then an increased aperture of organizations that these either independent or linked groups can actually reach. Recent ideas and challenges that we've seen include things like Dragon Force. So for those of you who've hopefully done plenty of reading, I mean, ultimately, if we'd simplify it, and just to kind of back up a couple of those statements that are on the slide already, effectively, Dragon Force is a cyber attack infrastructure as a service. And what we've seen in recent times is how those infrastructures are being used by groups, or what we should probably say is independent but interoperable and I'd say collaborative groups such as Scattered Spider, which ultimately isn't really a central group. It's an organizational hub of individuals working and using those areas, techniques and infrastructures that are available to them. So this is a really powerful but also quite scary combination. So what does that mean for us? I mean, the first point is that now truly anyone can launch sophisticated cyber attacks. I think we've seen on LinkedIn those classic pictures of young and spotty individuals out of school saying this is what the standard cyber attacker looks like, etc. But ultimately, it does change the landscape in that many more wannabe cyber attackers are going to be successful and ultimately be what you might call good in their role. But also, everyone can now be targeted by the most sophisticated techniques. But ultimately, it means the adversary now has two things we most crave, right? The first thing is speed of delivery, right? We're all after speed of delivery, speed of change, changing infrastructure, the way we deliver technology, the way we deliver applications. We all want speed of delivery. And the second thing is their significantly increased return on investment. So if you think about the number of attacks you might get for $10 now, you're going to get an increasing number more for that $10 based on the way the infrastructure is working. So unfortunately, the tables are turning in such a way that it's obviously the adversary is getting further ahead of the outcomes that we want to achieve. And what does this mean? Obviously, visibility, speed, scale, absolutely now part of the adversary's toolkit. But ultimately, can we look to achieve those three things? The second part that's really starting to deliver challenges and has delivered consistent challenges for organizations is the evolving hybrid infrastructure and what this actually means for threat detection. So if we just keep those things we've just discussed in mind, the elasticity and unplanned and sometimes accelerated exploration of cloud and hybrid technologies is actually reducing organizational control, whilst creating a much larger attack surface for them to go after, as well as dramatically increasing their identity gap. So we're seeing that we ultimately, by accessing these hybrid infrastructures, creating more identities, we are generating a larger attack surface and ultimately creating more avenues and gaps for the adversary to explore. The question that I most often used to ask organizations in previous roles when discussing hybrid infrastructure, working for an organization that delivered an awful lot of these technologies was, are you confident that you have the ability to see yourselves as the attacker sees you, right? You have an infrastructure now that's changing day by day, dynamic IP addressing of these ranges that you're using to access hybrid infrastructure. Do you have that confidence? And secondly, how do you address so many data points with confidence in an environment that's changing daily? What are you doing that's going to help you address that gap? The common answer was no. Not so much as we don't think we have 98% confidence, 97% confidence, but when we actually sort of took it down to sort of brass tacks, the main change was that no, we're not really confident day to day that we have those two things covered. And why is that? Well, one of my customers kind of likened it to the changing state of hybrid infrastructures, very specifically from a cyber point of view, by the way, as whack-a-mole. And I use that term. It's really well used to describe a situation where solving one problem leads to another and the emergence of another. And you're akin to just sort of going through those day-to-day areas of trying to attack the different problems that we see. So that was very much the feeling of what hybrid infrastructure and that accelerated process of delivering was delivering. But to take it back to a more serious note, why was that? Why did they use the term whack-a-mole? Firstly, was the increased threat volume. The fact that actually there were threats, pervasive across numerous areas of infrastructure that ultimately they didn't have full control of. I know we talked about the shared responsibility model and some of these other areas, but ultimately there was increased threat volume across their infrastructure, full stop. Secondly, they genuinely were suffering from SOC fatigue, or actually a lack of SOC. Good security administrators, etc., but actually, they didn't have that ability and running, they were kind of running behind the mill in terms of what they were changing. That sort of basically delivered increasing levels of data paralysis. And thankfully, we do have other tools available to organizations now that are helping them to make sense of those additional data piles and resources that they need to access. Sadly, I'm pretty sure this is still the state for 99% of organizations, but transformation is often put before security. I think it's very difficult for us all to agree that every single transformational aspect of a business, considering the pace of change we need to achieve, where security is ultimately put first. And cyber is therefore investigated post-project, or ultimately doesn't form part of that brief in the first instance. It's definitely a consideration, absolutely. But ultimately, in a lot of cases, business budgets just aren't reflecting the true costs of a full design and build of application infrastructure. It's very much we spent $100,000 on infrastructure, and now we need another $10,000, $12,000 to install various different bits of code analysis or tooling to help us secure that. So that was definitely a field that's been concurrent. And when we think about where the attackers are, they're building infrastructure and accessing infrastructure and tools and techniques faster than we are. But we need to start embracing a bit of change in terms of how we adapt and where we put cyber across our hybrid infrastructure focus. What did they need to achieve? Ultimately, yes, visibility, speed, and scale. And now we've got definitely the question of the business needs a SOC. It needs a form of security operations center to adequately scale and move at speed to meet the dynamics of the business, because speed of transformation is absolutely where we are in terms of hybrid infrastructure. So building on that original theme of where we are behind the attackers. I'm going to close on another question, which is the other challenge. As we start to sort of investigate all different levels of maturity and how we can improve our posture, why is now looking at traditional SIEM and DIY models very, very difficult, and why is it tough to scale? Hopefully, we can all see my next slide as I come to it with a bit of detail. But the operating models are actually really hard to navigate. Never mind design. The volumes of data, the level of visibility can be quite daunting when you actually start to put all the different tools in place. And ultimately, the need to invest continually in skill and scale means SOC models are impossible to execute well or even affordable for most businesses. And what do these models actually look like? So hopefully there's a number of us who are really aware of this and won't think that my next model is too cartoonish. But in reality, there are a number of kind of 3-4 areas that we really need to think about. We've got frameworks, your incident response plan, your playbooks and run books, threat modeling, those different areas, right? You've got the foundations of the infrastructure, so log aggregation storage, redundant network architecture, those kind of ideas, and then a multitude of different tooling, of which SIEM is one. And I've sort of highlighted that in blue there, but obviously the people and how those skills and teams actually work together to deliver the SOC model. So there's a lot to bring into play to be successful at it. But SIEM really is kind of a small part of that, but sort of comes with its own challenges. SIEM is ultimately, it's a functional element, right? It's a solution that aggregates and analyzes activity from different sources, but ultimately they are framework solutions that need to be taught and interacted with on a really regular basis by teams of people to perform their role. Because if we don't, we end up with extremely high volumes of false positives. Clearly, if you're not interacting with the tool, if you're not helping it learn, it's very much a keep warm solution. You genuinely do have a lack of context because it needs the other functional elements of the SOC and the tooling to deliver the context required to reduce those false positives. There is a complexity of ownership. who's delivering it, how do you update it? One SIM is not the same as the other. You reach a level of maturity. Is it just log data you're after? And then lastly, it's much more reactive than a proactive model. And we all need now to be in a situation where the tools that we're delivering are of a proactive level. So where are we trying to get to? Well, at the moment, SIM is slow, it's reactive, it's complex to manage, which is kind of the opposite of where we want to be in terms of speed and visibility and and scale. So what's needed? Ultimately, within that model, within whatever that framework model is, whether it is a SIEM of sorts or a technology of sorts that we want to work with, ultimately we need context that's most regularly delivered by things like threat intelligence. We need to be able to continuously threat hunt that data regularly to understand where we are today based on where the model is, or the security operations team and the indicators of compromise we had were yesterday. We most definitely need to leverage AI. AI is going to allow us to make a multitude of decisions at machine speed, at speeds at which humans cannot. And we need AI support to respond. So we need to make sure that there's full integration across stacks to allow really fast, proactive response to those challenges, which brings us to kind of things like response orchestration, etc. So, AI learning. We need to be highly integrated to deliver investigations, and ultimately we need to get to a model that's much more proactive and moves at the speed in which we can deliver. So, what we've worked out and what we've worked on at SecureWorks is Taegis, and Taegis is a platform that takes some of the potentially Bill will squirm slightly before we go on to our next section of the webinar. But ultimately, yes, it does take some of the base elements of what a SIEM can and should do. Well, for sure, right? We need to aggregate the data. We need to be well integrated. We need to take those sources in. Absolutely, 100%. Do we need to do it in different ways? Yes. And do we need to change the way that integration works? 100%. So hopefully, we'll give you a really good idea of why visibility, speed, and scale are just so important. Why some of these other areas of SIEM, etc., are less, are going to be less adaptable and less programmable as we move forward. And we'll take you through some of the areas in which we feel that we really changed that landscape. So, thanks, Kevin. And after that, I will move a slide onwards and move on to Mr. Bill Beverley.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So, having set the barriers to hit, hopefully we can spend the next 20 minutes or so just walking through the Taegis platform specifically, because I'm not sure a lot of you are aware of the broader Sophos portfolio, but as this kind of new entrant, I want to make sure that you understand the differences and the additions that we bring through the Taegis platform. So Taegis, as you can see there, it's a proprietary built solution. So we've not taken any other technologies. We've built this from the ground up to basically deliver really accurate and high volume both detections and automations, and that's what we're going to go through in the next few slides. If you could just move on, please. So what we're looking to cover, clearly from a deployment perspective, we're looking to enable risk reduction. That's really the game that most of us are in. We need to be there to protect our organizations. You would not be able to mitigate all risks, but as a tool can be a real foundation for your risk management program, that's where we're looking to assist. The protection's got to be comprehensive. Jez has kept mentioning that the visibility elements of it. If you're not looking everywhere, you're not going to see the context. And those together help you improve that overall security maturity. Again, a lot of businesses are on that path to actually increase their overall security maturity. And people are generally starting from fairly low level in a lot of instances based on fairly limited resource. So again, we'll look at how we can help accelerate that journey to give an overall more mature solution as as time goes on. So again, assisting your business. And at the end of the day, it has got to deliver that ROI. And so we'll look briefly at some of those. If you could move on, please. So the platform itself, there's a lot of core capabilities, as we talked about in that kind of scene space. These are not unknown capabilities, but they have to be presented in a way that becomes very easy to manage and is actually limiting the impact on you as people who are actually owning and driving these systems. So correlation, yes, take that data in, being able to make those links, but the contextual enrichment is really important, and that's where we're talking about the breadth of the security to make really efficient detections. As we know, particularly where you are resource strapped, you do not want to be chasing rabbits all over the place that turn out to be false positives, wasting people's time, reducing confidence actually in what you're delivering. So it's important there that we can get, and the tooling behind us helps us with the accuracy. And then kind of moving through more to the sort of remediation aspects, that we can actually automate the responses as well as build out other playbooks so that we know how to deal with situations to mitigate the threat at the earliest possible opportunity. So automation is really, really key. And a lot of that is based on that understanding of the threat. If you could move on, please. So a lot of what we're looking at here is this whole concept of detection at scale. So just click through. There's a series of builds coming. We look at a whole range of different aspects. So there are things that are really cheap and easy to do from a compute perspective, like the indicator elements. So IOCs, domains, hashes, whatever, those are really good indicators if you are curating that data effectively. And we can make a really quick snap decision. And a lot of scene technologies and things are really good at that. One thing I point out here from our perspective is that we have billions of IOCs, 20 million, but those are curated really effectively, whereas actually you get a lot of lists, and you might do FSISAC or whatever, and they'll give you, various people give you feeds of indicators. We look at this stuff and we are revalidating these, particularly the more ephemeral ones. We're revalidating every 24 hours. So just because something indicated that a particular domain was bad today, we would be looking again tomorrow and the next day and the next day to make sure that that is still bad, because certainly with a lot of infrastructure that people use to deliver their attacks, kind of C2 infrastructure, it's really transient. So you have to be absolutely on top of that, and that's where an organization like ours can really add value to corporate clients, because that's not a capability that many other people actually have. As you move through, we're looking at kind of increasing levels of sophistication. So if we're talking about the IOCs, we're talking of thousands an hour. You may want to build, on top of that, you may want to build particular rules. So you're understanding some of the behavioral pieces. So if I see this and this and this, I can make an inference and take actions. So again, that's a core constituency. And there, if we look at those, as opposed to thousands an hour, you're looking at thousands a day. So we've come down an order of magnitude. Again, a kind of an important capability, but still kind of prone to, you will get some false positives. And if you look, and those of you kind of work extensively in the Microsoft environment, for example, you will see a lot of these kind of incidents where you get a lot of information. There is some element in it, but is it actually actionable? So you end up classifying a lot of stuff as false positive. We are layering things on top of that to reduce that significantly. And part of that is basically understanding how threat actors work. So this is the third area, the tactic graphs. So because we do such a lot of threat research, we try and inject ourselves into many of the malicious actor groups. So we're in botnets and things. So we see tooling instructions being sent out. That gives us a good understanding of what series of actions really does represent a threat and what is less likely to. So again, you'll see that in terms of the threat graphs, and I'll show you one in a second. But again, that level of work is reducing stuff down to, let's say, hundreds a week. So we've gone from thousands a day to hundreds a week. And then you're actually in the final area, into the real data science, the big data, machine learning models. And part of that is the fact that we have got something like 20 years of tagged data. We have got quite literally petabytes. I think we're at around sort of about 15 petabytes of data that we can use to train our models. So again, people can create AI models or machine learning models, but those are only as good as the data that you use to train them. So again, that long history, together with all the other components, means we have got a prodigious amount of data that we can use for that training purpose to give us real accuracy. And one of the things actually we've done, and got some patents pending for actually detecting when we think hands-on keyboard, somebody is actually in direct connection with your infrastructure. That those data models help us actually identify that. Okay, if we could move on, please. So from an organizational perspective, clearly it's got lots of areas that you need to think about, and you're probably assigning budgets or at least, or maybe adding into your risk registers, different areas where you need coverage. And I think in a lot of these areas, Taegis can actually provide that for you. So obviously, in terms of the actual controls, the EDR components, managing your variety of heterogeneous endpoints is super important. So that's a key element of your security strategy. Of course, it isn't everything. You've got all the other components in there as well. Your cloud security, your network security, vulnerability management. These are all components that you should have like security solutions. But what we need to do is to make sure that we are bringing all of those together so that we've got the widest possible visibility. But again, as we're talking there, the context, we can bring all of those together, apply all of these toolings over the top to give you a really effective outcome. And then in the bottom, in terms of capability, it's got to be 24/7. Obviously, your threat actors are global. They don't take the weekends off, or their weekend might not be your weekend. So, you've got to be 24/7. You have to have the ability to respond, both within the tooling, but also perhaps in a broader sense as well, if things are really going badly. A thought out, practiced, effective incident response plan, and people that can back you up in the delivery of that, as well as like the actual threat hunting side for the sort of the low and slow, and threat intelligence. If you could move on, please. And to, again, the point that Jez brought out there, it's that visibility, it's super important. You need to be able to bring information in from the widest possible scope. And also, there is a difference between actually taking just pure alerts and events and actually understanding the kind of telemetry. Because what you know today is only a subset of what you will know tomorrow. We are continually learning as the threat adapts, as threat actors respond to different controls that we deploy with on the white-hatted side of the line. So having information from all of these different types of systems enables us not only to provide effective security going forward, but also then being able to look back. There are things that we didn't know before that we now know. Well, we need to be able to go and find those. And if we didn't bring that information in the first place, you're not going to be able to go and see it. So that's why it's important to try and increase the scope as widely as possible. And as we talk at the end of this, we can deliver this in a very predictable model that really promotes breadth rather than being very kind of data-driven, speed and feed type volumetric pricing based. So we actually will do an endpoint price so that we can bring in as much information as possible. So let's just have a quick look at what that service aspect looks like. So we've got an underlying platform which is delivering the grunt in this. But over the top of that, you've actually got an MDR service. An MDR service delivered, obviously, so some very experienced SOC teams who are around the globe. I think certainly the combined presence now from a SOC perspective, we've got nearly 500 people across the combined Sophos SecureWorks business in SOC functions alone. So those teams, I've got the different people around there. So you can see you've got obviously your account management, so helping you in the first instance to actually define the solution and implement the solution. You've got threat hunters, you've got the analysts who are actually clearly kind of doing the work, the incident response people, professional services. So it's a complete web wrapped around this platform to basically focus on delivering your success. We've got a real wide range of telemetry sources, as we talked about. So you name it, in nearly all areas from an IT perspective, we are being able to take coverage. So not only the traditional security controls, but also you see there's identity. So identity, as they say, identity is the new perimeter, but it's extremely important and is highly targeted by a lot of attackers these days. So you have to have control over your identities. It's amazing how many people are not aware how many different identities exist in the business and whether they're still being used or default or whatever it may be. So that's an important part. And you see the OT elements in there as well if you're going into an OT world. So we talked there about bringing that information in, being able to work with it to actually produce context, because we don't want to flood people with a whole load of information from this. It's about actually synthesizing, define investigations. So here the context and the tooling is going to help us. If you just do the next page down. Here you can see that triage process taking place, that combination of both automated and manual triage processes, and that is what's leading you to the investigation, which is where you actually engage as a customer on this. You just go again. Brilliant. So that allows, but whether it's being kind of informative or requiring action based on automated or manual tasking, then that information is flowing through to you as a highly, think of it as curated, so that you're getting a very low false positive rate. You can do all manner of sort of training on the systems to make sure that is delivering exactly what you need. But the role of doing that is provided by that team that you saw earlier. So if you could go again. And what we're looking to, again, there we go. What we're looking to do is to make sure that the information we give you is the most impactful. And there again, you can see the surrounding teams that are there to help you, be it the SOC team, and we'll see in a second, the SOC team are 90 seconds away from you. So there's a chat feature in there that will go directly to SOC analysts. So you've got questions, you can get a SOC analyst online, sharing your screens, or you're sharing the information in your tenant within 90 seconds. So there's real support in there, as well as your threat hunters and responders and the like. So we're trying to do that real curated service. Could you go on again, please? Right, actually, just go through again, please. Just watching my time. So what that delivers us, so we have a 60-minute SLA for that completed investigation. So if something is actionable, so there's higher critical events in there that mean that we can determine next step and real intent. There's a 60-minute SLA, but our figures from last quarter, we were averaging about a minute to detect, about 30 to create that investigation. So that's pulling all the events, alerts, telemetry data together. Someone's provided analysis over that, and that will take about 30 minutes. And then with the automated response actions, the predefined playbooks that we create means you also have a very short remediation window as well. So, we're averaging about 5 minutes to remediate. Okay, if we go on, please. I just wanted to give you some just in a larger format, we might actually go into the product itself. I just want to give you a couple of snapshots so you can actually visualize some of the things that we've talked about. The investigation itself is the key deliverable. So whilst we have a tenant and we are working in exactly the same tenant that you are, this is a completely shared environment. You can see exactly what we do. Hence, if you want to go and talk to an analyst, what is this? Why is this a threat? Is this not a threat? They are working literally with you in that common environment. So as an example there, you've got an investigation. You can see summaries, next steps, recommendations, any references to threat intelligence reports or whatever that back this up. And as you go to the next one, you'll see another part of that investigation, doing those entity graphs. So you can actually visualize what that threat was, hopefully that we have mitigated, that you can actually get a visualization on it, what it was, why it was a threat, what was done about it. So we do a lot to try and present that in the most effective way. Right, if you move on again, please. We also recognize, and particularly in these sectors, that you often have heterogeneous environments. So we're not pushing you into one choice of technology, or you may be in a process of evolving and change. It's important that we have that heterogeneous support. So again, if you look in terms of the different environments, you may have information coming out of Microsoft, out of CrowdStrike, out of obviously the Sophos tooling itself, a whole range of different things all coming in, and the platform is able to use those technologies in terms of the automated response actions. We can isolate devices just as well in Microsoft as we can in CrowdStrike, and obviously with the Sophos tooling as well in there to add to that. So it's important that we are bringing our solution to where you are, really. So customers all look different. The environments never stay the same. So it's important that you've got a flexible platform underneath that will actually continue to deliver the outcomes that you need. Go on again, please. A lot of that's based on connectors. There's libraries of different connectors. I think as you saw the little bullet point diagrams that Jez and I both put up, I think we're about 350, 360 standard connectors at the moment. That number is ever growing. You're able to create your own connectors. And what happens if you do the next click, you identify the technology that you want, then you can just drill into that. It will tell you how to set up that connector, or actually provide the interface to do that connection. So it's very straightforward. It's very well documented, so that we can get those connections to get as much data as we can into the system. If you go on again, please. And then we can operate on the playbooks. So what happens if? What happens when? who needs to be told, where do I get enrichment data from? All of these different playbooks that, again, get defined in your environment, hundreds of standard playbooks, plus obviously you can, again, create your own. So it's important there that you've got that flexible environment. And lastly, click. There we go. From a dashboarding perspective, we want to make sure that you can actually see really clearly, really quickly, the state of your environment. So to be honest, from a user perspective, the majority of your time, you are looking probably more through the dashboards. If you click again, you can see like kind of the state of the your overall environment, what the coverage is looking like. You see down the bottom there, you've got kind of, are we seeing data coming in from the various kind of core components like mail systems, cloud, endpoints, whatever. So this is typically what you're dealing with, and then investigations will be brought to your attention as you need to do it. But all of the data is always there for you to inspect or interact with whenever you wish. If you go on again, please. So what are we giving? We're giving the kind of really quick access we talked about. There is an unlimited response service behind this, which means that if we see something that we think actually is a serious, could go into a full-blown incident, it will get escalated from just being a standard investigation case into an incident response case. Incident responders will be working on that. This is provided as part of the standard service, and it is unlimited. It's not you get 20 hours, 40 hours, whatever in a month of that sort of support. As long as the data itself is coming into the platform, hence wanting as wide a aperture as we can get, the responders will work on as many of those that are required for as long as is required as well. So that's important. The analyst support, the unlimited response support are really kind of key areas in that. And as we say here, sort of, I'm not going to go through all of those points. We're happily to share all of this with you after, but it's on that, very wide aperture, heterogeneous environments. You've got a 12-month retention built into that. So all the data that we keep is there for 12 months because, you may not understand something as being a threat today, and in 3 months' time, you want to go back, you now know something else. That data is always there. It's not timing out. If you need to, from a compliance perspective or whatever, you can extend that 12 months out to 5 years. Not many do, but the option is there for those that feel they ought to. Right, if we could just go on, please. In terms of the actual portfolio itself, there's obviously a lot of SaaS products on the left-hand side, the XDR component, which is basically what we'll be talking about today, the actual XDR platform. There's an incident, there is an identity tool as well that actually will investigate your posture from an Entra perspective, and we will be then expanding that out to other identity stores exist. The best BBC approach to this. So there's other things there that we want to do, again, from an identity perspective, but not only are we interrogating Entra or your identity posture, we're taking that data and we're actually applying that into dark web searches as well. So your identities that you're managing, there's going to be an assessment of their posture within your environment, but also take those out, look for if any of those identities that you have appeared in breach notifications, for example, or is there anything there that from our deep web understanding and querying mechanisms could represent a threat to you. So that's from the identity side, a network component, and also vulnerability management component. So a number of different software or SaaS services on top of which we layer the actual service elements themselves, MDR, an enhanced MDR service. So those are the services together with other more specialist pieces that you see on the right-hand side around incident response training, deployment, all of those good things. If we could go on again, please. So on here, these just outlines the different levels of service within MDR, which is kind of what we're primarily focused on today. So if you look on that left-hand column, the MDR column, these are all standard features, nothing else needed to be added there. You've got the access, you've got your 24/7 service with that full 12 months retention. Remember that it's just priced on an endpoint, so there's no variability depending on whether you're under attack and you're getting a spike in data volumes being sent through. It's very, very predictable service. If people are looking to extend that, perhaps they're kind of more interested in doing additional threat hunting. So your standard service will give you a threat hunt a month. If you want to do more than that, then you might look at a plus, which gives you some other sort of more professional service enhancements around the package. And we can go into a full-on enhanced, which is targeted really at the larger customer base, but is where we can actually effectively sit in your environment. Our badged analysts will also be in your own environment. They would have your own email addresses and entities that be actually physically working inside your environment on your behalf. So through the joys of playbooks, of course. So that's that component, the set of services that how they build up. If we could just go to the next slide, please. One of the other points I want to make is actually this is really simple and quick to deploy, particularly as we move more and more to SaaS-based services. If you want to actually bring in all of your endpoint telemetry, invariably now, let's say you're a Microsoft house, we will connect into the Microsoft backend and take all of that telemetry. We use an event hub to do that, to bring all of that telemetry into our platform. You don't have to deploy any other additional software. So depending what agent technology, EDR agents that you've used, as you can see there, obviously we've got the Sophos agent, but you've got CrowdStrike, Carbon Black, Microsoft, SentinelOne. So if those technologies are there, or maybe you're transitioning or whatever it may be, we will utilize those. And in the same way for the cloud services as well. So you've got Azure, AWS, GCP, and including Workspace as well. So again, we can connect to those core services and bring that data directly in. So it's very, very quick and straightforward to deploy. So if you just do click on, so we can deploy this quite literally in days, and again, to ISO certified an environment. So again, from a compliance perspective, and also you've got a choice actually. I say EU hosted, you can be EU or US hosted for all of your data. So really, so a very defined deployment process. It's low impact on you, and when we actually look to do this, we can also provide kind of proof of value installation there, where we can actually set. I say we're confident we can set this up in most instances in days, so we can run you through, say, for a couple of weeks. You will actually see what it takes to live with the platform and start seeing the benefits that it is giving to you. The large number of people where we've done the proof of value, and actually it is, yes, please don't turn this off. The visibility has improved massively. We need this to stay in place. And you don't re-implement or anything. It's a flip of the switch at the back end for us to say, this is now a live system, and the analysts will take over its management side. So from that side, really straightforward and easy to do. What I'm going to do is just this, and then I'm actually going to flip right to the end. Sorry, those slide runners, just I'm very aware of the time. Just keep going, because I want to do the use case piece. Oh, actually, I want to stop on the Microsoft model, so just keep coming. One more, that one. Microsoft is a big component in so many people's environments. One of the important elements from our side is to have a really deep, complete integration with Microsoft. You'll see a number of people that they may connect to, say, the management API, they may connect to sort of very specifics. We look to integrate to pretty much all of the Microsoft data feeds, and the way Microsoft develop, I'm sure you're familiar with this, is it's sold as a package with lots of different teams that have developed things, and they develop stuff in their own way, which is why you have so many different interfaces. So you can understand why a lot of companies don't go the whole hog to try and cover all of these. In our world, kind of, why would you not? If you want to say you truly support Microsoft, you need to be making sure that you're covering everything. So be that Defender for Endpoint, Defender for Cloud, Identity, Vulnerability, the Azure platforms, all of that kind of stuff. So yes, we take that data in from pretty much all of the Microsoft sources, and we can work and enrich that data. But even in the most diehard Microsoft world, you will also have non-Microsoft stuff. I don't know as many people that use the Windows firewall as their primary core firewalls. There are other elements in your infrastructure. So that information comes in and is handled with the same level of intensity, shall we say, to give you a consolidated service. Right. So if you could just whiz on. Keep going. I'm to do this. And if you get down to keep going. I want to just have one final stop. Our approach here is very much to deliver a complete MDR service, but delivered in a way that is easy to consume and that is super predictable in terms of how it operates, but also how it's costed. So it enables people with limited resource and perhaps budget constraint to operate effectively. And as we talked about at the top of my section, from a business perspective, it's about the management of risk. It's about the security maturity journey that organizations are on. So by delivering a platform that's going to give you the detection capability, it's giving you the ability to respond. Now, response being maybe emergency actions like isolation or forcing password resets, isolating accounts, whatever it may be. But also those kind of enrichment activities. If I see this, get more data from here to enable better outcomes, to make better decisions. That's what this platform is designed to do. And we need to be open without compromise. That's the tagline that we've had for a few years. I need that information from as many different places. So I do not want to be pushing people into specific technology choices, because the right technology choice today may not be the technology choice for your business in 6 months' time. And we don't want to be in a case of, well, actually I'm going to rip out or remove a whole load of functionality because you've changed the technology platform. It's got to be that real open environment. And that's really what delivers you the return on investment. It helps you with limited resource because we're doing so much of that work. We're presenting you with a very low false positive side deliverable in terms of the worked investigation. And it's that very much shared model. So it gives you that predictable nature, and it gives you the really strong ROI. I want to finish off with just 2 examples, just to give you a view to sort of how this works in practice. One example here is kind of as a blue light service. They'd had a SIEM project that had gone fairly catastrophically wrong, cost them a lot of money, and they were still failing the IT audits. So they were under a lot of pressure from the senior management in that environment. to actually put in a demonstrably effective security platform, again, that is covering the wide range of infrastructure that they have. They have employees, but they have a large number of volunteers. So it's difficult for them to actually control every aspect of their environment. So that sort of flexibility is something that was really key to them. So part of so many quasi-government organizations, they've got the Microsoft E5 licensing, but again, so like Sentinel costs, variable and still a chunky element. So that needed to be controlled, but they needed to utilize what they'd been given from the E5 side. So again, having that really effective Microsoft integration, super important. And they got to show that they could pass audit time after time. So yes, they were able to do vendor consolidation, because we talked about a number of different components up ahead that you can actually bring down by delivering a single platform. You've got your detective platform along with the kind of SIEM log management retention platforms. You're consolidating, but it's super keen for them was being in that sector, that whole return on investment, that it could be deployed super quick, because they were very much behind time due to the previous projects and the fact that they were under board level pressure to pass the government audit. So we're able to work very closely with them, turn this round in, again, a few weeks, to actually get them to a point where they could start passing these audits and continue to develop the services. So they've been with us about a year now, and from where they were, it's a kind of a night and day difference, because they've got the control with a very small team. And then the last one is in a different areas. This is finance example. As a customer that's been with us for a long time, very much focused on that sort of security maturity journey, and we've worked with them through sort of initially like a device management service that we used to provide for them, helping them with firewalls and some other security infrastructure. And as we developed the Taegis platform, they've moved on to that, and basically use that as the heart of their security program. So, they're a fairly sizable organization. I think we've got 77.2 billion pounds of assets under management there. So a significant organization, and being able to demonstrate the actual security and being able to work through a whole range of different scenarios, incident response and threat hunting are really important to these guys. Fortunately, they haven't had any major incidents where we've needed to test too many of these aspects, but the fact that the visibility they have and the ability to actually show from to their board, and actually they've used some of our people to help them deliver board presentations, has really helped them on that maturity journey. And also in 7 years, as you imagine, they have had a couple of technology changes, one quite significant change, and that heterogeneous nature of the platform means that means no interruption in the service. Right. So with that, hopefully, covered some of the core elements of the service itself, and just tried to show you what it looks like and where some of the how some of the customers are actually using those tools. So I hope it's given you a bit of insight. So thank you for that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you very much, Bill. And that was incredibly interesting. And thank you, Jez, for your piece as well. And an extra thank you for running the slide deck today as well. That's very much appreciated. So if you'd like to get in touch with us to talk about anything that you've heard today, about the fantastic Taegis platform, or even getting a free threat profile report. I know some of you have registered already for that, but if you'd like to talk to us about doing that, please reach out to your account manager. We'll also proactively reach out to all of you today post the event and get some feedback on how it went. But you can also get in contact with me directly. You can find me on LinkedIn or through your account manager, or and again, if we need to speak directly to Sophos/SecureWorks, we will do. So we'll send that recording and make that available offline. But lastly, just to say thank you all for joining us today. Really great that you could spend your time with us. Thank you to Bill and Jez, and I'll say goodbye.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.